I'm a little disadvantaged here tonight. Thomas has notes and he told me nothing about this.
All right, is everyone conveying theirs back there? How's it sound? Pretty good? All right, I got a thumbs up back there by Brad and Tommy. Awesome, and Sue. Great, thank you.
Awesome. All right, we have another microphone that's much louder, but hopefully this is loud enough. All right, thanks everyone for coming. I'm Kyle with the Bike Coalition. Most of you, a lot of you came out last month to Brothers, so thanks for sticking with us for more Massanutten Western Slope fun. This one, a little bit of history. I did forget at Brothers to make sure everyone, hopefully you've all met her already, but we have a new addition to the Bike Coalition. We have Amanda Presgraves. So I wanted to make sure we recognized her. And just really excited to have everyone here. So we're going to let these two talk and ask each other questions and go into all this good stuff. Thomas has notes, note cards, which is good. Hopefully everyone else wrote out their questions also. And a bunch of you have heard this story, and you all have various stories of this probably, but I've told this at our planning meetings of the first time I went to the Western Slope. You weren't supposed to be there, so we parked on the road. I think I went with Thomas, and we held up at the top, and all we could do was go all the way out Kaler's Ridge and come down. And it was terrifying. I think I was a sophomore at JMU, and I didn't know what in the world I was getting into. And so it's pretty wild how far it's come, not just from access to be able to get there and publicly use it and have folks there, but also the quality of and volume of trails. So super special place. We're really lucky to have it. We're super excited about this planning process, and over the coming months, we'll keep talking about where we go with this plan. But there's a lot of history here, and as Thomas has said, and we'll probably say again, we can't look at where we're going forward until we look at where we've been. So thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, and thank you all for being here. This was kind of just a brainchild of mine, not long ago. And Kyla, thank you for encouraging me to do this, so thumbs up. As Kyle mentioned, we are in the midst of Western Slope planning, and I believe in order to see where we want to go, it's good to look at the past. And with Kenny, this probably has more knowledge of anyone of the Western Slope, and been a long employee of Massanutten Resort. I thought he would be a great one to kind of drill some of these history questions, and we all can learn. And if you have questions, we want to hear from you too. But yeah, Kenny, thank you for being here. I was really surprised you agreed to do this, and I just shot Kenny a text, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." I was like, "I didn't really give you much information." And
He still hasn't.
I haven't. I just said, show up at the top of 7, let's have a conversation. I didn't tell him anyone was going to be here. So, but yeah, no. So, you are retiring from Massanutten. Congratulations on that.
Yeah. Thanks.
40 years, am I right?
44.
44, all
I
right.
counted them all. There's just a little bit of time off there, but no, thanks for having me. And you guys, this is amazing.
Well, it's, the community has been a huge supporter of the Western Slope, and it's been a great partnership between the community and Massanutten. And I've always felt my introduction with the Western Slope was really you in the early days of the Massanutten Hoo-Ha, which, if for you who don't know, Massanutten Hoo-Ha, what year did it start? 1988?
89. We actually had a race scheduled in 88 that didn't happen with Serena.
Was it COVID?
No. It was Cool Breeze. It was Cool Breeze as opposed to Marks.
Oh, yeah.
So we had that plan, and I don't even remember why it didn't happen, but they something happened in their relationship in the shop, and then some of the guys from Marks, George Willits and those guys. I don't think George was there at the time.
Right.
But we went ahead with the race in '89. We've been looking at stuff that was happening in West Virginia and Mount Snow, Vermont was a big thing. And then, the nationals in Davis It's like, we can do this, you know.
Yeah, and you did it. You
Yeah.
won the oldest or second oldest race in Virginia, right?
Yeah, we're the second oldest continually run race.
Right.
You know, Steve Evans, I keep texting him saying, hey man, why don't you quit so we can call it before I retire.
Yeah, that Tidewater Classic's been going on for a while. Yeah, and I think 1990 was my first hoo-ha, and I probably went with Chris Scott. Maybe he might be able to confirm the year, but I think it was that second year. And I remember driving up to, first of all, we got lost on the way. You know, we didn't know quite how to get there. And I remember seeing what I thought was Massanutten Mountain, which was Laird's Knob in the background, being like, oh my God, we got to climb that, was my thought. And I think after that race, I almost wish we did, because so many of the old trails were just these like short, steep grunts. And I think a lot of us are spoiled now with the newer trails, but the old ones are still in there if you go hunt them out.
Oh, most of them are still there. Yeah, and I think that first race was like a 6-mile loop. You know, and it was a lot of straight up and straight down, and you know, a couple of gravel roads in between. And you know, the funny thing about this, the cool breeze thing is Serena and Scott, when we were out there riding one day, looking at having a race, they looked at me and says, you know, this is all really cool, but there's not enough technical stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, you haven't seen some of the other stuff. Because, you know, back what we were riding back then was, you know,
Very different.
yeah, and not
Bikes and
terrible.
trails.
Yeah, bikes and trails.
So, yeah, one of the things that I remember early was, okay, there was a barn. Like, I felt like I was riding on someone's farm. There was cattle gates, there was the barn, and, you know, I had no idea. I was like, what is this property? What is the history there?
That was Hensley's Pond, which is, you know, still called Hensley's Pond. It was, and a good part of it was Hensley's farm. I'm not exactly sure which Hensley's it was or whatever, but there was a big barn there that was actually a milk cattle dairy farm. I'm not sure what time it stopped being a dairy farm, but when I first started riding over there, you could go into that barn and see the milking records still on clipboards. And there was a stone house right next to it, which has since been torn down, but it's on Creekside, Creekside. They had the water supply was right in front of that was where the stone house was, and I don't know if anybody knows the Bradshaw clan, but Watt Bradshaw lived in that house probably about 1980 or 81.
Oh, wow. So when was that, so time-wise, you first started riding there? When was that?
Probably 87-ish.
Okay.
86, 87, yeah.
Yeah. So it was very different. And then, obviously, when the hoo-ha came around, that started introducing more people to the area. But it wasn't an open trail system at that point, by any means.
No, the trail system that it had was open for, you know, that you could ride that loop unless you were a property owner or mountain guest, and you know, I know you guys were over there poaching. I saw you. I think it's why they never invited me to the first six-pack, because they knew that I'd probably say no.
That's true, yeah. No, Chris might have asked permission. I can't remember. But
I think he asked me the day after.
that sounds like this guy's style. But yeah, so it was, and I remember there's that house there which Tommy Thompson lived in.
Yes.
And I always remember accessing the trails via behind his house. I'm not even sure if the parking area wasn't even there. Like Kyle said, we either parked on the side of the road, or you know, those early days went in
I
behind
certainly
Tommy's house.
parked there because it was Tommy's, but yeah, the parking, there was no gate access. There was an overgrown parking area that we used for hunters access, but it, you know, never even mowed it, you know, other than, you know, farm. But you know, so and if you go up the road, you know, the two houses on the right, you know, weren't there at the time. You know, Dave's house, and then you know the Homestead Trail. You can remember the old trails. You know, we actually had some trails that went up around and above those on the right hand side.
Yeah, there's one big gravity dip. I can't remember what that was called. But
Yeah,
that was pretty awesome.
yeah, it was a big half pipe in there.
Yeah. So, and that road, the Del Webb Drive, was all paved at that point.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's paved.
Yeah, I remember that being all paved. And a lot of the riding back then in the 90s was hot, because it was all in the sun.
Right.
You know, it was all field trails and fire roads, and definitely some old logging roads. And when I was thinking about tonight, I was like going back in my mind about the history and thinking like, when did we start digging over there? And if I'm right, I want to say Big Stump for you those who know Big Stump Trail. I think that was it. I remember, if memory serves, you wanted to connect these two old logging roads, old trails that kind of went up and dead end.
You're correct. That was what it was. We were getting ready to have a race, and we're trying to add some trail, and you guys were saying, "Hey, can we help?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what do you guys want out of it?" But it worked out. But no, so that was it. You know, it was the first. I think that was the first. What was the club even called then?
It was before there was
no
mountain bike club. There was the Shenandoah Valley Bike Club, but they didn't want us probably a part of it. You know, we were kind of just lost mountain bike souls at the time.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure that's
right.
correct too.
Yeah, no, I think it's
that was the first section of trail that you built, other than me and Tommy going out in the woods with the chainsaw and saying, "Let's go over there."
Right. No, it seemed like that was the early trail development. It was just kind of picking the path of least resistance, which a lot of times was, oh, that looks like a path. No, that's just dried up waterbed.
But it was a lot of the trail, the older trail network was there was a dried up trail, a creek bed, or a logging road, or some sort of horse trail that went dead ended, and another one went up over here. It's like, well, how can we connect those two? And that's what we did. And that's how you get some of those super steep loops on the yellow. Now the yellow
Right.
loop.
Yeah, it was straight up. You go across 10 feet enough to try to recover, and then you went straight down, and we're totally scared. Right. No, that sounds accurate. Yeah.
And now they're a lot of fun on e-bike.
Right. No, the Western Slope has one of the few places around that are open to e-bikes, and that's been a game changer. That's for sure.
There you go. That better? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I thought it was projected.
Hey, Thomas.
Yeah.
How did it transcend from people just walking in to ride to being a handshake with the Great Eastern, the company, and being allowed to be there, making it official?
Well, I think I'll start. You can probably finish. But Thomas and a couple other guys, built that one section of trail, and then I think the next thing that we did was built the switchback coming off the second mountain.
The back way up to Kaler's.
The back way up
Right.
to Kaler's. We kind of, I don't know that we really cleaned it up, but we thought we did.
Yeah. Right.
And then I can't remember what year it was. I was thinking about this on the way in. That Thomas came to me and said, "Well, what can we do to, get some access, for these folks, legally?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." But we kind of came up with the idea of some trail work for, access. And I think Thomas pitched that to me, and we came to it for many years. It was a handshake agreement. Now we have a formal agreement, that we needed to have, but it was a handshake agreement, and it seemed to work out well. And I kind of flew it under the corporate Massanutten radar, and for the most part, and then it came out, and everybody's happy about it. And the current leadership at the resort is ecstatic about what the coalition's doing and what we can do together to have continue this unique partnership.
Yeah, I think Yogi was the Shenandoah Mountain Bike Club formed probably around 1996, and part of the reason was we were doing these trail projects, and we wanted to try to have a group, to kind of represent. And that was about the same time we were trying to get access. And back then, when Kenny agreed, it was just these little paper slips you got, and they gave you, and it felt those things were like gold, because it seemed like back then there was more security presence, or maybe we were just over there more often. But it was definitely like, before we had access, you felt like you were running from a man. It was kind of exciting, actually. But yeah, then Kenny, agreed on that, and he, I really give Kenny the credit of pushing that trail work component to earn that pass. Because at that point, you couldn't buy a pass like you can now. So those early years, it was 10 hours of trail work, and then I think we backed it to 8. 10 was too much. So we went to 8. but yeah, that is what really started spearheading the project.
I think really looking back on it now, I think it really that kind of really come to fruition about the time that we did the World Cup in '97, and that was kind of the genesis for the club, the
So, well, '97, I always say, like, what was in the water in summer '97? There's a
Right.
lot of really cool stuff happening. That was the World
the
Cup.
World Cup, and then that was the first festival.
Yeah,
that was the
mountain bike
genesis for the mountain bike festival was during the World Cup, the downhill World Cup, and that was probably the biggest cross country race that we ever had, and it was on July 4th. And it was about 110 degrees. And people were dropping out all over the place.
Right. No, that was amazing for those who weren't there. That World Cup, it was a big deal to have a downhill World Cup, which was on the resort side, but that brought in participants from all over the world, and it really started the listserv access as well for the kind of seeded that for years to come.
There's some pictures over here of some of that. And that's and I think I hired Chris that summer for help with the World Cup.
Yep.
And George Willett, so that was our first mountain bike staff.
Right.
So we were building the trail and helping run that, and helping run the races on the Western Slope, because at that time it was just a downhill World Cup, and we were allowed to have citizens races in Euro parlance.
Right.
For that, so we had 500 and some 50 people on the Western Slope for that was the first time that we extended laps out, and it was like a 9-mile loop, and the experts did 3 laps, and you guys were hurting.
We were. Yeah. No, that was a good day. And that, like you said, kind of morphed into the mountain bike festival. Not to sidetrack on that, but it all kind of is connected, because all these people were coming to Harrisonburg and like, we're coming here to ride. We want to really show them everything we have. So we had the one-day mountain bike festival. Out of
That
Slope.
was kind of in the heyday of that, when Dirt Rag doing their festivals, and they came down and helped, and
Right.
so we had. I'm sorry for making the mic, but no, so that it was a lot of fun back then. It was still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's kind of when the partnership really kind of took off. Was at that point was when with Chris and George helping in the shop. They're like, hey, what can we do? What can we do? And I finally relented and let you guys go out there and ride. And I've said for years that I felt like kind of this dual feelings about it, because I was like, God, I had this place all to myself, and now these other people are here. But then again, I never had the trails that we have now. So that was the trade-off, was getting awesome trails. But it's like it was pretty cool to be able to go over there any time of the day and not see anybody but the people you brought.
Yeah. No, it does. Times have changed. There's pros and cons. People will argue.
But it's so cool to be able to share that with the community.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a cool resource.
No, it's a great resource. I was out there this morning with, this has created so many partnerships. Not, just between the community of Massanutten, but the Appalachian Conservation Corps Group, who does trail projects. They're training out there. I was meeting them this morning, and we were on trails. Had a couple different names. Originally the $100 Hill, which then became the Berm Trail, which is now Special K now. Yeah, I think you're right. So, but that was our first machine project in 2000, I think it was, and that really, all of a sudden, when we started bringing in machines to the Western Slope to do trail building, that was kind of a game changer.
Yeah, they were a lot better than me with the tractor.
Right. Well, you
did a little of that too.
You got into the machines too. So, and I remember we built that trail, and then we built a connector, because the Western Slope is there was 2 sides. There was the kind of the Del Webb side, and then there was the side over by Hensley's Pond and Granny Grind and Laird's Knob there. But the mountain was not connected really.
Yeah, it kind of had to come back down to the road almost, or
Right.
or some less desirable connections. But
Right. Yeah, and it used to be in the old days, the only way to the top, as Kyle, you were mentioning, was straight up the paved road. There was no trails that took the back way to Calvert.
No, but I think you're right. But I think you talk about partnerships. I mean, to have the Appalachian Trail crew, they're not only are they, they're training people to build stuff, but they're training sawyers. They're training, all kinds of, people that are, spreading the word, for like what you all do from the coalition standpoint, as far as trail building and trail maintenance and just community activity for, outdoor activities. So we're glad to have those, those kind of partnerships with those people, as far as what they bring, what they do for us, and what we can help them do.
Yeah, this is, we were talking before we came up here, excited about Kevin, your event coming out with Virginia Momentum, and that's, another partnership between, event organizers. And it's not just mountain biking now. I mean, it's amazing how many times you go out there and people trail running, Amanda, all the time. And, hikers, families, I mean, Lake, Hess's Pond is a destination for folks, so this has grown much beyond just mountain biking now.
Oh, no question. Without having the families out there just walking their dogs, and trail runners and bikers, and there's so far, knock on wood, no animosity between anybody. As far as everybody's out having a good time. It's a community park. It just happens to be on our land.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome way to put it. I've never heard it put that way, and I think that's a great way to put it. And I think that is, if we think of it as a community park, that's going to help, I think, for the future. And that was kind of the thing I was saying at the beginning of all this is, how do we learn from the history? How do we move forward? And I think the way we're going to move forward is by all those user groups getting along, sharing the trails, and giving back. I think one of the keys behind that trail system has been the trail. I mean, I think probably everyone in this room has been out there almost with a shovel or a pick at some point. So thank you. It's been a group effort to make it what it is. And I think that's going to always have to be part of it, to be the key to success over there. It's just the community giving back, getting dirty, or people who put up signs. I think of Melba Cook and how much time she spent out there. Like, what are these signs for? I know where I'm at. Those are the things that all of a sudden make it more of that community park, and try to break down those barriers to people who feel like the Western Slope isn't for them.
Yeah, I think that it started when the Trails Committee, or whatever we called it, 5 or 6 years ago, when we said, hey, we need to focus on building some entry-level trails, some beginner-level trails that aren't beating people to death, and rocks and steep climbs, and that's what really started to happen. And I think that happened because of a collaborative decision, as opposed to in the past, like, what do you want to do this summer? Well, let's go over here, let's build that, let's build this. Whereas like you have this other group saying, wait a minute, we need this and this, and to define where you're going to spend the resources. When we started that process, made a huge difference, and it's showing now.
Yeah, and I think I remember when we first started building over there, you were like, "You sure you want to do that? There's going to be houses over there." And I was like, "When are they doing that?" You were like, "It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years." Unfortunately, it's been 30 years. We haven't seen anything. I'll probably still get the same answer. And one of the things I remember was kind of always that 2,000-foot elevations. Like, you're always like, if you want to build a trail, you really want to build it higher up where stuff's not going to get developed. So if you looked at the map and saw where the first 10 years of trail development, it was all above that 2,000 feet. It was the connector trail. It was, the upper ravine trail. It was 2,000 hours. It was places that were like, okay, they're not going to put a house here, so we're going to build there. Not a great idea. Made it much harder.
Yeah, 2,000 hours. I looked at you like you were freaking nuts when you put that in there. So it worked out well. So
yeah,
I was wrong. You're right.
You were very, very hesitant, and I see my wife Julie over there, and I remember going out there to flag with her, and she was pregnant with our first kid. So that was 2008. And she's like, why are we crawling on our hands and knees and putting ribbon in this incredibly dense, rocky terrain? I was like, it's going to be something great. Trust me, honey. And it is, so thank you. But yeah, that was that trail in particular. I think really opened our eyes to what we can do, and we had some great trail builders. Rich Edwards, comes to mind as being a huge resource in town that kind of upped the community's game to what we're capable of building, and so many people that have taken the lead from there.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know if it was in here or where we were. It was the first time that Rich came to town to do a trail building, when he was in the trail care crew. First time he came, and we're listening, going, I don't know about that, but he was right. And
we thought we knew a lot. We didn't know anything.
Question.
But yeah, that 2,000 hours was a game changer too, because all of a sudden you didn't have to ride the road the whole way. So, but now we did get to the point where, and a really good word is Dusty, I think's here, him credit for really opening the eyes to that beginner level and those lower trails. And I think it was kind of at a tipping point, because I know for me personally, it was, oh gosh, we get too many people riding over there, worried about us losing access. And then I personally got to the point where okay, maybe more people over there is better. Maybe that will kind of help kind of the tipping point. And I think all of a sudden when you have, a room full like this, an incredibly diverse user group that we have now, hopefully that will help us retain access over there.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think access is going away anytime, and I think the way we approached it, and the way I was so hesitant about it at the beginning was just from strictly a liability standpoint, and that's why, I think for a lot of years, people didn't realize that Massanutten never made really a dime off of anything over there, and that was really because of the horsemen and the hunters and the outdoors laws that gave us some liability relief for it being free.
Right.
So all the money went to the club, the coalition.
Still does.
Still does. We charge a little bit of rent for events and things like that, but it's certainly not. For us, it was an asset for an amenity, and not that we weren't trying to squeeze $2 out of every person that went over there and rode on the trails. And I think that was part of the allure, or part of the reason that it works so well. It's because it's like we had this big bad corporate people over here trying to take money from me for riding my bicycle.
Right.
And we were able to make a cool partnership out of it. That's really what it came down to.
Yeah, and it is a cool partnership, and I think some people, and that was, I think people know now, but I think early on there was that education piece where everyone thought the money was going
right
to the resort. It's like, no, that's staying within the coalition. That's going right directly back into, building trails, hiring, buying tools, hiring the trail contractors, things like that, buying the coolers of beer for Thursday night trail work crew, things like that, the important stuff.
I don't know the finances of the coalition, but I think it probably had a lot to do with being able to afford an paid executive director at some point.
Oh, it all kind of helped to the scale. It's a big resource in multiple ways. And now, we're at this kind of planning phase, and I think that was I remember Kyle and I kind of pitched that to you and Matthias, and kind of like, I wonder if we felt the need, we need to think about this. One, we need to think about the trail system bigger than what it is. We need to figure out how to make the existing trail system work. And like you said, the way we were doing it for years is like, what do we build this year? And we're always kind of scrambling. Now we kind of want to step back, figure out like, okay, we're good at building trails. We have great crews, but we don't know how to design a trail system. And that's obviously why we're bringing in the people now to help us with that part and help the resort. And potentially, one day, I mentioned this to you about maybe possibly the connection between the Western Slope and the resort in terms of connectivity to
that's
trails.
definitely one of our goals. It's one of the resort's goals is to long-term goal is to connect the Western Slope to the bike park to the rest of the resort, to make it more user-friendly for our guests, so they don't have to necessarily get in the car and drive to the top and then drive down and ride back up, or ride all the way around, or not take our shuttle, but just make it something that's more available for our guests to use and make it more of a draw. Our goal in the whole one of our goals in the whole thing about the Western Slope is to get people that want to come to Massanutten because they want to get outdoors, because they can hike or they can ride their bikes and they can do all the things that we offer outside of the cattle and all those amenities. We're a mountain resort, and people need to be able to get out in the wilderness and enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah, no, more people outdoors, the better.
And then you look at the potential for joining to Rockingham Park, and there's a lot of potential there, and we're excited about we got a long time to build it out.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look back, we past 20, 30 minutes, we've talked about the history of 30 years. Now it's like, wow, what will it be like in 30 years? And I think, if you asked us 30 years ago, would it look like this? I don't think any of us in our wild mind would think we'd have that show system.
No.
So, yeah, and it's so many people in this room. And so, who has questions? I mean, I have Kenny up. Rich, you were quick.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I can draw. Awesome.
I love this idea of the community park, but the history, I assume, it was laid out to be developed as housing. Why wasn't it developed, and what is the future? Would it ever be developed as housing?
It was developed. It was laid out to be developed. I mean, the gravel roads over there were subdivision roads back in the early '70s. The primary developer of the resort was Del Webb of the retirement communities, Del Webb Sun Cities, and all that. Part owner of the New York Yankees, and he died 72, 73, right in the middle of all that. The economy tanked, the oil embargo came over. His son took over the company and didn't want anything to do with trying to build out a ski resort in Virginia. And so, and then in addition to having the water and sewer issues, because at one point they were talking about pumping it back and pumping everything over from the other side. There wasn't enough water, community infrastructure, and so at that point, there was lots sold. There was lots sold on the Western Slope. And so I don't remember if I heard 15, I heard 20, and they gave those people either their money back or gave them the choice of a lot on the other side that sat fallow since then, other than maintaining the roads a little bit that we do. And as Thomas said, it was a paved road. And, so that was how that happened. As far as future growth, I mean, the resort is, Thomas is right. I've said, 5 years. I don't know if it's going to be 5 years, 10 years, but one day it's going to happen. But I think that day is getting pushed back again with the resort's long-term master plan of the over 55 adult community on the east side of the mountain. And so that's where their focus is for growth right now, all the way from 33 all the way up behind the Woodstone check-in building to the water park and higher up to on the eastern slope of Massanutten. That's a potentially an 1,800 unit, housing development with and we're learning from you guys too, because there's going to be a 5.5 mile multi-use trail that goes all the way through that. So we're trying to make the resort more pedestrian friendly, more cycling friendly as we do that. So I think, in my opinion, that as that's going to take so long to build out, then that just gave the Western Slope another 20 years. At least, and I think that there's going to be, eventually there's going to be some houses over there, but I think that our current owners, or the employees are owners, but our current board would think that this is such an asset that we may lose some trails, but we don't want to lose because we think people will want to live there because of the trails, and so that we're going to build a little bit more responsibly than we may have. So I think that answers your question.
Is that part of the planning process now? What happens if it's developed?
It is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of it. Was this planning process was to kind of get some of the cards on the table, find out what all the parties are thinking. So,
I think that the Thomas and Kyle and others, that when we met with with Matthias and my other bosses, it was where can we build? What's your plan? How do you see this? And I think that it opened the dialogue to saying, okay, that's cool. We can do this, and let's stay away from here, stay away from there. We're still defining some of those places, but because obviously, the area to the pond, at one point that was a golf course. In the early '70s, that was a 9-hole, 18-hole golf course was laid out through there.
Really?
It didn't happen, but so that's that. I think that our leadership at the resort and their vision of what's happening with the 55 and older community and the hotel at the water park and all those other things has made them realize, with the land planners that they've brought in, that, the older way of building things in Massanutten is kind of gone for the time being anyway. So it's more user-friendly space, more open space. There's plenty of open space up there, but the access between pods is going to be greatly improved by pedestrian and cyclists.
And that relationship you're saying, I mean, the resort invited the coalition. I went up to one of those meetings early on with the planners of like, hey, what feedback do you have for us from bicycle and pedestrian standpoint?
Right.
So, yeah, resort sees the importance of that. And like you said, fortunately, a lot of that future development's over there, which is going to preserve the Western Slope for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, great question.
Brian?
Sort of a related question. Kenny, you've been such a powerful part of this whole process. Is your 18-year-old replacement working with you, and why aren't they here tonight?
She actually is here. She's a little older than 18. Cameron Tucker, raise your hand.
Awesome. Welcome.
As will be Bill, our mountain bike director, and a couple other of our employees of mountain bike patrol and ski patrol here. So they're all vested in the process too.
Awesome. That means a lot that they're here. Anyone else back there?
Mark?
I had a quick question for Thomas. I'm trying to get an idea what kind of bikes you guys are riding in the late 80s, 90s. These front suspension, when did the front suspension come out?
That's funny.
Seat dropper.
It was what it was 26-inch wheel, rigid.
It's about what you see at Walmart right
The
now.
narrower the tires, the longer the stem, the narrower the handlebars.
Oh, yeah. 15-inch
Everything
handlebars.
was backwards. But the funny thing is everyone was on the same equipment, so we all had smiles. And just like today, when you go out with your friends, you're on similar equipment. You have smiles. So the smiles are no bigger now because the equipment's better. It was different.
I think the smiles are bigger now because the pain level was so much higher.
Well, I mean, demographically, yeah. I mean, how many people were 40 or 50 mountain biking back then? Not many. So yeah.
That young?
What's that?
That young?
Yeah, that young. So it was definitely a younger man's sport at that time.
In the back.
Yeah. So Thomas, you mentioned the difference between building a trail versus building a trail system. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yes. So as I mentioned, our community's been phenomenal at building trails. But we have looked at it pretty much, for the most part, one trail. Like, okay, where do we think the train's going to be good? Okay, we want to connect A to B. And that's, for the most part, been the thought. Talking to Jeremy Wimpy, who's applied trails research, and his vision from the trails plan, he's like, you got to think about zones. Where are you where do you want people to ride? How do you want downhillers mixing in with people on green trails? So how do you think of this from zones? And he's like, you guys don't need help building trails. You don't need help putting dots on the line. You just need to kind of look bigger conceptually. So, it's and I think that's the thing, is we've talked about this planning process. Everyone is kind of expecting to see all these dots on the line. And yes, we want dots on the line. But in order to have these future dots successfully, we need to think about this big picture. We need to think about zones. We need to think about where are we putting beginner riders? Where are we putting intermediate riders? Where are we putting the expert riders? All of a sudden we have, if we have shuttles, that changes the trail system. So it's less about lines, more about areas. And also thinking very long term. We are talking 5, 10, 20 years out, especially if we're looking at future trailheads in Rockingham County Park or on 33. Does that mean we're not putting in trails in the near future? No, we will. But we're kind of like, all right, let's stop throwing more spaghetti into the bowl.
And I think some of that too was a result of, with limited resources and limited times, like what can we get built this summer? What can we get built in the next 60 days? So let's connect this quarter of a mile over there, and that was the trails, and it's supposed to take a little bigger view of it and saying how can we get to, how can we start moving towards Rockingham Park? Not that we can work that out yet, but how can we start moving towards, Gerundo parking? Or how can we start moving to expand the trail system as opposed to just making the ball of yarn a little bit bigger that we have right now?
Right. And we started thinking a little bit outside that. I know, for example, when we put in a puzzler, the vision was there, okay, this is a stepping stone to try to connect to the downhill park. But that's probably about as big as vision as we have. So the plan will think bigger. But yeah, good question, Sue.
Like,
Each of you, what was your favorite trail build? Done that, it could be recent, could be way back in the day, or you can just step back and took a breath and said, wow, I can't believe we did that. What's each of your favorites?
whatever the newest one that summer was. No,
Nice
probably
cop-out.
2K.
Nice cop-out, Kenny.
Huh?
Nice cop-out.
Probably 2K. That's kind of true though, because the berm trail at first was like, wow, this is really cool, and then then we connected it. It was like, wow, this is really cool, and then we went to 2K. Wow, this is really cool. So, but I think, I think probably in hindsight right now it's probably quarantine because it gives so many more people access to different parts of the mountain for me.
Yeah, that will put me in a weird spiral spin, Mike. So, dangerous question.
That's what I was trying to do.
I know. I go back and I think 2K was just a game changer on so many fronts. It from a connectivity of the mountain, oh my God, we don't have to ride Delaware Gravity hard. That half mile was so painful. But also...
But riding up the top of that's not painful either.
Not as bad, at least from the shade. But I think the magic of 2K, and that name being the 2,000 volunteer hours that built it, was an amazing feat. And I remember Kenny saying, "You don't want to do that." I'm like, "No, I think we can do it," and we did it. And the thing is, we did it as a community. Like the amount of trail work days, we had a trail work week where from 12 until dark every day, we had trail crews out there. And it was amazing to see that thing come together. And I am very grateful because the community kind of entrusted me in doing this and kind of leading it. But I couldn't do it without everyone. And so I would throw out these ideas like trail work weeks, and people stepped up and came. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they're buying into
And
this.
they got like 150 feet to trail done that week.
Right, yeah, it was slow going. So, and 2K was only supposed to have one switchback. I think Paul Johnson can attest to this. It was supposed to continue going straight. After a year, we said, we got to get off this mountain. And that's when we brought Rich Edwards in. He's like, I could do 6-stack turns in the machine in a week. I was like, come on, bring it on. So, for multiple reasons, I think 2K, back to like the story I was saying with my wife crawling hands and knees while she was many months pregnant and, living with that. So, yeah, 2K. Good question. I like questions like that.
I have a comment, which is, you say like, oh, it's like throwing spaghetti in a bowl and the trails are not a system. My perception of that is like totally not the case. To me, it's like an amazing trail system where you have a mix of like flow trails, beginner trails, like 2K, like technical trails, and you can go out and ride for 45 minutes or 3 hours. It's an amazing system.
It is. I mean, and that's hats off to you all and Thomas and the leadership of Coalition. But I think we use that term probably a little too cavalier as far as doing that but we were talking about just how can we make it a bigger, better system as opposed to the system that we have.
I think if we threw another 20 miles of spaghetti in that same bowl, we would not be sitting there saying that. But no, thank you, Andrew. I think you're right. What we have there is incredible, and you do have this incredible diversity. You can do in an hour and a half ride. That's 7 miles from town. So yeah.
Oh, the nice thing about it is you can go out the next day in an hour and a half ride, not the same thing.
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah, can you guys talk about the difference, not just in building trail, but in the system itself compared to the National Forest?
I'm glad I don't have to manage the National Forest.
I've had experience, helping build trail in both areas. And someone once told me it takes 10 years to build a trail in a national forest. I was like, no, it doesn't. And I was like, no, that's fast. By the time you get through all the paperwork. So one of the magics of the relationship is we can turn on the dime. Hey, Kenny, in the past, which, we're honestly trying to get away from, hey, Kenny, we got an idea for a trail. What do you think? Well, throw some flags down. Looks good. All right, let's do it. In the national forest, there is, as you go up every level of bureaucracy, there's a lot more bureaucracy to get a trail on the ground. And from a trail system, there are two vastly different systems. You have an area that's 900 acres with the current Western Slope system.
With the trail system, that's probably about that, right?
Right, and you have 25 miles of trail, and you have an intersection every eighth of a mile. Whereas you can go to national forest and do a 10-mile ride, and there's 4 turns: a left, and then a right and a left. So I think that it's vastly different from planning, and different trail systems, but we're super fortunate to have the Western Slope because we've been able to get a lot of stuff on the ground in a very short time period.
And you guys know too that it constrained, having being private land, it constrains you guys from fundraising a little bit. As far as some of the governmental grants that are out there and available, that they're not interested in spending that at Massanutten to help build trails on our property.
No, that's a huge thing. The coalition's been very successful with, 700,000, close to $1 million. Yeah, $1 million of RTP trail grants, but that has to be done on 99% of the time on public
I
land.
think we got some stuff. I think that was mostly private stuff from
Industry grants.
Industry grants, that's right, versus governmental grant.
It is, that system has been privately funded, through trail passes, through donations, through some small industry grants. And that will probably always be the case. That's the disadvantage. The advantage, we can do it pretty quick.
I was wondering if you could talk more about the World Cup. I know that's kind of inside in the bike park, but that's a real curiosity to me. How we ever landed that, and then how you built the trail, and then whether there was some sort of payoff for the Western Slope. It sounds like you had a cross-country race over there at the same time.
Sean Palmer got arrested. Everything was great. The World Cup really came about from us hosting the Tour de Pont back in the earlier '90s, which that was, I can't remember which year it was, whether it was the first or second year, but it was Greg LeMond's last tour, and it was Lance Armstrong's first tour. They didn't get along, but go figure. But so the connections that the resort made through that allowed us, Norba, USA Cycling Norba, came to us, and said, hey, you guys, we saw what you guys can do. Would you guys be interested in hosting the World Cup? And I'm like, oh yeah. It's like, we don't have a bike park. Well, we'll build you a trail, and it really came down to, the World Cup trail was really Chris Scott and I walking through the woods with some other people, and was there anybody else in there, Chris, besides us at first?
We had Greg Herbold out there.
Yeah, but he came when it was almost done. His idea was to make it go through a lift house and have black Jimi Hendrix with black lights. But in the majority of that trail is as it was in '97. There's YouTube videos of it. It's a lot loamier than it is now. But we talked about continuing that relationship. And at that time, detachable lifts were starting to come in. And they wanted a little bit more. And then we talked about having, the primary sponsor for that event was Grundig. And so we proposed a budget to them. Grundig paid us, so we didn't have to live and die off of like a normal event like that, which is really hard to do. It's like, oh, we're going to give you all the lodging, we're going to give you the food and beverage, and then you got to pay us for the time in, you got to pay us for this and that. So we baked that all into the budget. I think at the end of the day, we made $40,000 on that, and it gave it, we got huge national exposure, and it kickstarted. Look what it kickstarted. So, it was a cool. There's some pictures over here if you want to check them out. I'll show you some videos we have, but it was a cool time. It started a lot of things at Massanutten. It was the first time we'd ever had concerts, first time we'd ever outdoor concerts, first time we'd ever fireworks, because it was a 4th of July weekend. So, that kind of kicked off a lot of things along with, we never got into the downhill bike park for a long time, but we still had a race on that trail, or trails like it. We'd had downhill races before the first one we ever had was on the Tower Road, which was like terrifying to watch or to ride.
Oh, yeah.
Full rigid bike, yeah.
Full rigid bike. It's like, our first events, were two-day events, and, it was all the same guys riding the same bikes, and it was trials across country and downhill, or hill climb and cross country and dual slalom.
Right.
It's like, everybody rode the same bike. Nobody had any different bikes or anything like that, and there was lots of carnage. There was lots of broken bikes and
Broken forks, a lot of broken forks.
just frames snapped in half on a water bar on the ski trail. It's like, oh, I'm not really made for that, huh? Like $2,000. Not anymore.
But I think that, Andrew, that summer, summer '69, and for mountain biking here, there was the summer of '97, and that was the World Cup, and a lot of things that kind of came out of that. And it brought a lot of exposure here, and it got the community excited. So I know I was always really disappointed not to see another event of that caliber come back on the mountain bike scale. So I still would love to see that happen.
Well, maybe with the detachable, maybe something like that can happen again. But they did. Norma did come to us in the years after that and wanted us to have a national, and we looked at it, financially with what. There was no Grundig right in the paycheck, and we're like, no, we're not going to make this work.
Right, especially when beds. I remember you always saying, "Hey, there's beds are valuable here in the summer."
Right.
Right.
It's like, and that was the thing. It was still, we didn't have the amount of rental inventory that we have on the mountain. So it's like I gotta shut down, sales and everything else to put 1,000 people in condos. It's like that just wasn't going to happen at that time.
Right.
Anybody else?
All right. Well.
That's good. I'm dry. And there's a bunch of pictures over here. I brought a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
If anybody has, there's all kinds of stuff over there. Take a look, and as you're walking around, glad to answer any questions that that you didn't want to ask to everybody.
Well, Kenny, I just want to say thank you. As
Yeah.
you go into your next career.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Thanks to all the resort employees here, and Kenny, thank you for making this happen for 40 years.
And good luck in your retirement.
Thank you. Probably see more of me.
Yeah, good. We hope it is.
That's the plan. But anyway, I really appreciate everything that Thomas and Kyle and the Coalition's done. It's we talk about it a lot amongst ourselves, and with land planning, stuff like that. It's a really unique relationship that a lot of people are envious of. Don't lose sight of that.
Yeah. No, we won't. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So one more thing, we do have our Western Slope team who's helping with all the planning process. We got a couple folks here. Who here is on our Western Slope team? Raise your hand. Oh, look at all those people. Look at that. So you can check in with them about any of the Western Slope planning stuff that's going on. We printed out, I think I have 10 copies in the back there of the survey results that we talked about last time. They're on the website. Got a bunch of hats to give out, stickers, buttons, all that good stuff. Grab anyone from the team. Thomas, Kenny, talk about the planning, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
That's great, y'all. Thank you.
We went down to